Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammang sanghang namasami. Good evening, dear friends, and welcome to this Tuesday evening program at the Wat Buddhanasorn. You can see that today the Dhamma Dharini group is joining together with the Wat Buddhanasorn group, as we've been doing regularly on the first and the fourth Tuesdays of each month for some time now. In this,
Ayya, can you
yes.
put mic a little bit closer?
Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, yes, much better. Thank you.
Let's see now. Now, is that better?
Thank you, Ayya. Much better.
We're going to start with the short Pali chanting, which is the version that is typically done at the Wat Buddha. So I'm going to share the screen so everybody can see it. You're welcome to recite together with me. Araham Samma Sambuddha Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supartipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddha Nusati. Iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vinyakarana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuntaro purisa dhammasarati sat Tadeva manusanang buddho bhagavati dhammanusati. Sabakato bhagavata dhammo sandikriko akaliko ehipasiko O panayiko pachatang veditabo vinyuhiti. Sanghanusati. Supatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho. Ugrupartipanno bhagavato savaka sangho. Nyaya partipanno bhagavato savaka sangho. Samikhi partipanno bhagavato savaka sangho. Yadidang chattari purisa yugani atta purisa pungala. Esa bhagavato savaka sangho. Ahunayo pahunayo dakyanayo anjali karaniyo. Anuntarang punya katang lokasati. Requesting the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts. If you are keeping 8 or more precepts, you can recite the first 5 that are the ones that are in common and remember the rest that you're keeping. Mayang Ayya Visung Rakanataya Tisaranena Saha Panchasilani Yakshama Dutiyampi Mayang Ayya Visung Rakanataya Tisaranena Saha Panchasilani Yakshama Tatiyampi Mayang Ayya Visung Rakanataya Tisaranena Saha Panchasilani Yakshama. And again the Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. The 3 refuges. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sangham saranang gacchami. And the 5 precepts. Panatipata veramani sikkapadang samadhiyami. Adinnadana veramani sikkapadang samadhiyami. Kame sumikchakchara veramani sikkapadang samadhiyami. Musavada veramani sikkapadang samadhiyami. Sura meraya majja pramadatana veramani sikkapadang samadhiyami. We have gone for refuge to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. We have undertaken the training rules to restrain from taking the life of any living creature, to restrain from taking whatever is not given, to restrain from misconduct with the sensual objects, particularly sexual misconduct, to refrain from false speech, and to refrain from using drink and drugs that lead to carelessness. The principal teachings of the Buddha. Sabba papa sakaranang kusala supasampada sakchita pariyodapanang etang buddhana sasanang. Homage to the parents. Ananta guna sampanna janeti janaka ubo Mayhang mata pitunang va pade vandami sadarang etena satchavajena sada soti bhavantu me. Honoring the teachers. Pachera charya hunti gunattaranusasaka panya vudikarete te dinnovade namamihang etena sakchavajena hotu me jayamangalang. And loving kindness. Sambe satta sukhita huntu avera huntu ambya panja huntu anika huntu sukhi atanang pariharantu. Dear friends, we are continuing on the theme of reflection, reflecting, continuous mindfulness. And one topic that's very fruitful for reflection is about guarding the senses. Guarding the five senses, seeing a sight with the eye. Does either greed or aversion come up for me? Hearing a sound with the ear. Does either greed or aversion come up for me? Smelling an odor with the nose, does greed or aversion come up for me? Tasting a taste with the tongue, does greed or aversion come up for me? Or touching a touch with the body, does greed or aversion come up for me? As we sit for meditation, I'd like to invite you to tune in to the touches, to those points of contact that come along moment by moment. Each time the mind is aware of one of the five senses. When we're sitting with the eyes closed, the sense of touch is very often what we settle awareness on. In scanning the body with the sensation of touch around the body, or with the breath, this touching of the breath. It can also happen that the hearing comes along during the meditation. One can hear a sound, and so the touch of the sound vibration. I'd like to invite you to notice whenever there's that contact, touching on the gate of the senses, there can be a reaction in the body, a pleasant or unpleasant feeling. If you feel a pain or feel a mosquito crawling on your face, there could be a strong reaction, a strong restlessness. Or if you feel a pleasant feeling, there could be another kind of a reaction that the mind is reaching and wanting to hold on to that pleasant feeling. Or it could happen that during the meditation, a thought comes up, and if you are really alert, just at the first moment when a thought starts to come in, you might be able to notice, kind of like looking back for a second, you might be able to remember there was a touch, there was a sense contact, and then a feeling, and then the mind picked it up and started a thinking. So, if the mind starts to get carried away with thinking or desire or aversion or restlessness because of these contacts, that's something called in the Pali the kama guna. It's called the cord of sensuality. It's what makes the mind reactive because of some kind of touch through the senses. Or it might happen that while you're meditating, you experience a touch in the body or a contact in the senses. And it's as if that contact were happening at a distance from you. Like there's a contact, like something happening in a different room or outside the window, that it doesn't need to affect you. You don't need to start thinking. You don't need to engage in any kind of reaction with it. So a touch is just a touch. A smell is just a smell. A taste is just a taste. A sight is just a sight. If this is what's happening, then you could say that the bond of sensuality is not present for me just at that moment. And then you can continue meditating, feeling glad and happy that for that moment, the bond of sensuality was not there. But if you notice that the mind is picking it up, it's starting to go, running around into thought or into a reaction, then you would notice that bond of sensuality is present, just meaning that you get caught up in the reactions to a touch through the senses. And if that's the case, please notice with compassion what's going on, and then make the effort to put it down, to let it go, and to come back to meditation. So if you see this bond of reaction, if you can, let it go. If you're not able to let it go, then you just have to observe and watch and understand it. But if you can let it go, then just let it go. And if you notice the touch through any of the senses, and the mind remains detached and calm, then you should be glad that that bond is not present just at that moment. So with this introduction, I welcome us to come for a time of meditation. Please come into an upright and balanced meditation posture. Setting the torso of the body or the skeleton in a way that's upright enough to allow the breath to flow very freely. In other words, not slouching. Allowing the chi or the energy of the body to be like open, not crushed. And then after establishing that balanced quality, then allowing the body to relax, letting the shoulders drop, letting the belly be soft, letting the legs be relaxed, letting the arms rest on the lap, letting the hands rest on the lap, letting the face be relaxed. Aware of the touching sensations, which is obvious to you, like the touch of the hands, the pressing the seat on the chair or cushion, touching of the feet or the legs on the floor. touching the clothing on the body, touching the air on the skin. Aware of the sensations inside the body, which is part of touch. Any tightness or pain in the muscles, the sensation of the heartbeat, of the activity of the belly. The energetic vibration of the blood flowing in the body, or the nerves vibrating in the body. If anything in the body is tight or painful, think of relaxing around it, letting go of any tensions, allowing that to float away. One may hold the entire body in awareness, sensitive to each touch that arises to awareness, each moment of touching any place in the body. And if a sound comes along, just notice the vibration inside the ear. Or any other sensation. Notice it at the gate of that sense operation within the body. If the breath is clear, noticing the breath. So, dear friends, I brought up this topic about the kama gunas, or the sensual bonds, in connection to this ongoing theme that we're developing throughout this Vasa. Here at Dhamma Darini, we are on the theme of Pachavekana, or reflection. Here in the temple, we've been reading together a certain sutta. It's 151 in the Middle Length Discourse, is called The Purification of Alms. And probably I shall bring out that sutta next Sunday for our regular sutta study program. Reading this sutta this time gave me an idea that is a possible answer to a puzzle that I have had for a long time, like decades. I've asked several teachers about this, and the question was, in the contemplation of Dhammas, there's a suggestion of contemplating of the six senses and the fetter that arises from those. And then there's another contemplation on the five khandhas. So the six senses are the five material senses: seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, plus the mind sense, which is able to cognize thoughts or mental objects. So that's a theme of contemplation. There's a method of approaching this contemplation, especially being very aware of the moment of contact when the object comes to the senses, and the consciousness or the knowing faculty, and they come together, like the tasting function internally, the externally, the taste of some food or something, and then the taste consciousness, which is able to cognize that. Those three coming together makes the contact. And just at that moment of contact is where a Vedana, or a feeling, arises. And just at that moment of feeling is where there's the possibility for tanha, or craving, to arise. So clearly we see that with this contemplation, or this investigation about the senses, it seems to imply that it's helping us to develop a very sharp, clear, bright awareness that can pick up that moment, which is so fast, when craving arises in a response to some contact. Then the other teaching about the five khandhas, that's the clinging aggregate of the body, the form, the feeling, the perception, the volitional formations, and the consciousness, which are aspects of our experience that it's said that a person might identify with and think of as being the self. Or one may be attached to all or part, or any combination of those things, as being oneself, something that we identify with. And so the question that I had was, why would it be sometimes better to focus on the six senses, and at a different time, better to focus on the five khandhas? When is this meditation more relevant and suitable? And when is the other meditation more relevant and suitable? That was my question, and I have been asking around on it, and I haven't really gotten a very clear or definite answers from several different teachers about that question. But it seemed to me that in looking at the sutta about the purification of alms food, it definitely gave the at least the meditation on the five senses as coming earlier, and the meditation on the five aggregates coming later. And it seemed to be actually for a very clear reason that it would be possible that a person who is not yet able to obtain samma samadhi, or right concentration, if they're not yet able to gain jhana, it's because they are not yet able to let go of that bond of the five senses. So this investigation about the bond of the five senses is a more, it could be very relevant as a preliminary practice. For myself, one reason that I may have been questioning this over so many years is that I'm in the intuitive category, you know, in Western psychology, there's a typology of different personality types, and for a sensation person, the information that's coming in through the senses seems to be real and clear, and it's what they're able to perceive, and it just seems very clear to them. And for what's called an intuitive person, the information that's coming from like within the body or within the realm of thinking, or within the realm of emotional responses, within the realm of perceptions, the whole thought process, and the way the mind-body thing is happening internally seems to be more real. And what's coming in by the senses is like, I don't know, trivial or not important or not that clear, not that easy to notice. And so as a person who was have a strong intuitive personality, the emotions and thoughts always seem to be much more real to me. Ideas always seem to be real to me. And like the taste of the food, or the being hungry, or being tired, or being, or the touch, or the sounds, or all those things was less significant. I wasn't so bad that I would, put on the wrong colored socks and not notice, that my socks were two different colors or something like that. But nevertheless, I feel that in the suttas, when the Buddha teaches, when he's giving these teachings about the six senses, in a way, it's a wonderful correction for a person who's got that intuitive quality, that actually a person like that, a person like me, would tend to have a lot of ignorance and delusion towards the experience that's happening through the external senses because of not having the mind that's trained to pay attention to that. And so then it's a wonderful training, or bringing up, coming to more clarity and starting to come to clear knowing, to train the mind to be able to look and notice and be awake and be alert and to be connected, to be alive with what is happening through the five senses. And then only if one has woken up sufficiently to be able to notice a sense contact when a sense contact is happening, then there's an opportunity of noticing that feeling is arising in connection with the sense contact, and that the craving is arising right after that. So if you're like oblivious to the touch, all that you know is you have craving, but you don't know where it came from. But if you train yourself to become aware of the sense contact like that, then there's an opportunity to be able to notice the arriving of a moment of craving much faster, much earlier, when there's even a better opportunity to abandon it, until if you're, in this state of being, sort of like oblivious to what's going on, and then until some strong reaction has already arisen and started to take off. So in that sense, the developing this reflection about the bond of sensuality arising at the moment of the contact, especially with the five senses, is a preliminary practice that needs to be developed before a person has a chance to enter into right samadhi. We know that the first jhana has two factors. One is being secluded from sensual objects, and then secluded from unwholesome states of mind. When it says kamehi, vivicheva kamehi, I have come to the clarification that it doesn't just mean being secluded from sensual desire, because if you say I'm secluded from sensual desire and I'm secluded from unwholesome states of mind, well, sensual desire is already an unwholesome state of mind. So it's kind of confusing, like why in the explanation of the first jhana does it say that in a redundant way. But if you take the expression vivicheva kamehi, secluded from sensuality, take that in, that's in the plural, kamehi, that's referring to the five kinds of objects. So then in our ordinary life of an ordinary, unenlightened, uneducated person, they're swimming in a world of addiction where they believe in all of the appetites of the body and are continuously feeding the appetites with, whether it should be tastes or sounds or sights or the various kinds of entertainment or different kinds of pleasant touches, different kinds of comforts, different kinds of things that are, soft and nice, things that are beautiful and refreshing, things that are cool when we feel too warm, things that are warm when we feel too cold. We just live in this world of continuously feeding ourselves with all these different kinds of contacts to take care of our desire. And this is kind of like what it is to be born in this kama world, this world of sensuality. Is we're a creature who's capable of taking all of the different kinds of objects that we need to satisfy the senses. But when we enter into meditation, we are setting those things to the side. We would have hopefully approached the meditation cushion in a state where perhaps it's good if the body is clean and the place where we're sitting is clean. The place where we're sitting is comfortable and simple. We're not seeking to place ourselves into a torture chamber of discomfort, but instead coming to a meditation place which is quite neutral, quite simplified, and making a decision that during the period of the meditation, we're not going to be going out to get anything to satisfy our senses. We're not going to take a drink. We're not going to have a snack. We're not going to open the window or close the window or turn the radiator up or turn the air conditioning up or adjust any of the external things in order to make ourselves more comfortable. We've settled on, a reasonable space and a reasonable posture, and we're just going to sit there and just be with the way it is right at that moment. And so in that way, we're choosing seclusion from this continuous process of satisfying our sense desires during the period of the meditation. And then the second factor that's secluded from unwholesome states of mind, that has to do with the presence of the 5 nivaranas, or the 5 hindrances, which are preventing stillness, preventing insight and clear thinking, and making it impossible to settle for meditation. That is the sensual desire, the aversion or dislike, the sloth and torpor, the restlessness and the skeptical doubt. Then in this, so with those 2 sets, in this particular sutta that I was looking at, the purification of the alms food, there are those 2 sets, which I take as a shorthand for being able to enter into samadhi. And then the next set, the third set that comes along, is the 5 khandhas, that identification with the 5 aggregates. And just what occurred to me is that this is sort of you could say that the attachment or the identification with the 5 aggregates is an aspect of delusion. It's an aspect of dukkha. It's the summary of dukkha is the attachment to the 5 aggregates. But losing the attachment to the 5 aggregates is one of the aspects of stream entry. It's an aspect of insight, of losing the delusion that you would find a self in any of those phenomena that are summarized by the body, the feelings, the volitional the perceptions, the volitional formations, or the consciousness. And so in this way, it seemed to me that it's would be possible for a person who was wanting to be enlightened, a person who wanted to follow the teachings of the Blessed One, who was interested in, like trying to go all the way or trying to go as far as they can. Someone who was very motivated to reach the awakening of the Dhamma eye, to reaching a stream entry, that they would be very interested in doing this reflection on whether or not the identification with any of the aggregates or any combination of the aggregates was present, or whether it was gone. So then the practice with the five aggregates in that way, associating the five aggregates with being one of the factors of one of the fetters, which is binding us until we become enlightened, that it could be one of the first fetters that a person might be able to escape from. So I've heard in many cases for many years, as long as I've been in touch with Vipassana meditation or the Theravada Buddhist style of meditation, I have so often heard about, as a beginner's practice, to really investigate and really come to understand the five hindrances, and to know whether those hindrances are present or absent in the course of our life and in the course of meditation. And I had heard, I guess, once in a while they mentioned about the restraint of the senses, but as being also a good practice for a beginner. But when I was much younger in Buddhism, I didn't really pay attention to that because I was not connected to the senses anyway. So it didn't, because of my personality type, it wasn't very meaningful to me to grasp the significance of it. But now it seems to me that anybody who is not skillful in obtaining jhana or skillful in obtaining samma samadhi, that definitely these two practices are a pair. The investigation about the senses to see whether that bond, moment by moment, am I bonded in the reactivity to the senses, to sense desire, or do I have, at any given moment, do I have a detachment where I can just see and a touch is just a touch and the reactivity is not happening? That's a very precious, fruitful, important reflection to do. And it's a reflection that anybody can do, and it's important for anybody. So this is my Dhamma reflection for tonight. We in the program with the Wat Buddha-Nussern, we go until 9 o'clock in California time, which is 30 minutes longer than the time that we follow on the other weeks. I would like to see if anybody here can add their own observation about the significance or the method or any success they have had in working with the meditation on the senses and with the practice of restraint of the senses, or the this question of whether or not the kama guna, or the sensual tie, the sensual bond, is either connected or detached. I see that we have a couple of monastic people here in the room, and I'll invite their comments as well as the questions from the Wat Buddhanasorn, or the questions from anybody else, or your observations, or your success story. Okay, Richard.
Yes, thank you. I'm not quite sure if I understood your very beginning when you were talking about just meditating on the senses, etc., as one thing, and the are you talking about the senses and the five khandhas as the other?
Those are two sets of contemplation, like in the Dhammanupassana. Those are two of the
Yes.
sets that we see. And the question is, when is
see.
the right time for one and when is the right time for the other?
Okay, so all right, so I did understand what you were saying. I just wanted to make sure before I make comment. So the first of the five khandhas is form, and form is the six senses. Basically, that's why in dependent origination it goes nama rupa. Nama means idea, okay, rupa means form. So it's an idea, it's a symbolic representation. A name is a symbolic representation of a form. So if I say cat, everyone here who knows what the word cat means, some vision of a cat will appear instantly in your mind, okay? Either you have a cat or you've known cats or whatever, you just know the general concept, maybe you saw a cartoon, whatever. So you'll see cat, okay? That's namarupa. And then that is a visual representation. That form has six senses. So every different form of a living entity has a particular mixture of six senses. So when you're looking at the five khandhas, form means the six senses, and that's why the next thing in line is usually translated as feeling, but I think sensation is really the correct term, because Buddha limits it to just, is it pleasurable, is it painful, or is it neutral? All right. He doesn't go into the actual function of the senses until he gets to the next item in the five khandhas, which perception. And in perception, he describes, okay, if it's the eye, if it's sight, is it red? Is it yellow? Is it blue? Is it white? Because that's how the cones and rods work in the eye. Okay. Although modern science will say green, for one of the color schemes, but it's basically the same thing. And there's some question in the Pali language as to whether or not the word being used for yellow actually means green. I've read that by some scholars. So your eyes are working in that way. Either there's an absence of light or there's light. Okay, that's the white, or this colors, and then it mixes that all together. And the sense itself is it pleasurable? Is it painful? Is it neutral? That's actually feeling. If you poke your eye, right, it's going to hurt, But if you've been very hot and you put some cool water in your eye or drops, right, they feel much better. That's why it's that sensation. It's just those things, and it's been, in my opinion, it's been very confused because of not understanding the difference between sensation and how Buddha limits it, and perception in terms of the five khandhas, which he says perceptions are many and varied, but in relation to this is what I'm talking about. And so through the eye, those colors go in, whatever, and then they go through the cords, the gunas, okay, which are bundles of senses, just like we say, the the spinal cord. It's the same idea. So through the bundle of nerves, I'm sorry, I said senses, through the bundle of nerves, it goes up into the mana, and there it all comes together and makes a vision of something or other, okay? And that is sankara, made together. So all those different cells, nerve cells in your eyes that are able to pick that, either the light or absence and the different colors come together, and they make a sankara, a thing in your mind, okay, in your brain, actually. And you have to be conscious. Buddha says there's suttas in the, I think it's well, I can't think of the word right now, but one of the collections of suttas, there's a section where he describes this. He says that the first 4 of the 5 has consciousness like underneath it. It's like seeds. So wetted by desire, the seeds grow out. So there's the seeds growing out of form. There's the seeds of cognition growing out of sensation, out of each one of these things. And when that all comes together in your mind and you have that sankara, then you can have a mental sankara as well. Oh, I like that vision, or I don't like that vision. So you're kind of having sankaras on top of sankaras on top of sankaras, right? And the whole thing's flowing around and all the senses are going forward. So Buddha does divide the specific senses out a lot of times in the sense of, well, he'll say, okay, you know, is the eye permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Lord, you know. So is what is impermanent, is that subject to, you know, sukha or dukkha? You know, dukkha, Lord, you know, okay, you know what I mean? So is that a self then? You know, no, Lord. So that's like a certain type of contemplation of the senses, but that's to separate you from thinking of the senses as the self. But the senses, again, they're a subcategory of the 5 khandhas. They're all wrapped in together. And those, and so you're supposed to look at the 5 khandhas in the same way. Like in a certain sutra, Buddha says that all Shramanas and Brahmanas, when they formulate the idea of a self in that way, they're just circling around the 5 khandhas, okay? And another sutra, he says, like an animal tethered to a post, and he's just circling around that post. You know, you can go a little out, a little in, whatever, but he can't, you know, can't get away from it. So I'm not sure if it's too good to try to separate these things into different things. I think it's better to see them as a comprehensive whole and how everything goes together, and one thing is flowing into another, and it makes it much easier for you to see it clearly as it is, and start to separate yourself out, you know, from misidentification with the 5 khandhas or the senses as subcategories, etc. Anyways, I hope I didn't talk too long, but
Yes.
as you were talking, that's what.
That is a useful review. I suppose what I was trying to, or what a different way of taking it in brief, would be that the 5 khandha presentation is pointing to the delusion of self and breaking that, and the senses, the perception, the presentation of the senses is pointing to the arising of craving and breaking that. So like craving is one thing, the delusion of self is one thing, and they say that you know, craving and delusion, well, clearly they go together, but they're sort of like two aspects of our what keeps us trapped in suffering. And I do find that the analysis of, in terms of the senses, is really seems the most powerfully, as is pointed up to that moment with contact Vedana Tanha, that nexus right there of contact Vedana Tanha, contact feeling or sensation and craving, is the most powerful kind of a teaching moment, and the most fruitful side of that. Then with the 5 khandhas, as you were pointing out, it's like the identification of something as being a self, and the possibility to, through the contemplation or reflection about the khandhas to relinquish and abandon that identification is the fruitful aspect of that. Like in terms of the like the psychology of like how perception occurs, which is very interesting, but it is an aspect of Buddhist psychology, but it seems to me that the Buddha was most interested in the analysis of dukkha and how to get out of dukkha, and for the understanding of how a consciousness takes the the color and the shape and so forth and different aspects and integrates it together into the perception of an object. That's all. It's really interesting. It's fascinating. But the thing that's most important in terms of the Dhamma is that this is the moment when tanha, when craving can arise. I'm just giving a warning that in a few minutes, I'm going to call on Seminary Satima so that she can get ready. But before that, I'll hear what Ren has.
Thank you, Ayya. I have to confess that different terminology tonight is particularly swirling and confusing to me. There's khandhas, there's kamaguna, there's 5 aggregates, and so I think I need like a mind map or some sort to kind of fit it all together on a different time. But I do want to say that I identify really, really well and very strongly with an example that you said about being tested or MBTI as a very intuitive, high score, really high and intuitive. I'm the same in that aspect where it sometimes feels, especially when I was younger, sometimes I feel like just a disembodied mind, I don't even feel things. I have no, gender, or not even a human. I'm just thinking. And so in one of the few times where we meditated and I was able to really focus on senses, like what you said, how it's really, really useful for me. I think that I was able to go somewhere with it, that when I could identify maybe thought into feelings and how that feels on my body as a sensation, that's kind of a revelation. I wish that I come to it. No, there's no wishing. Yeah, I'm glad I came to it.
Good.
At this point, and I think that will be a very important mode of practice during meditation. However method that's most appropriate to it, I would like to really hone in on that. It grounds me.
Mm-hmm. So much of the teaching is about being able to be in the present moment, not to be lost in concepts. And so in the many different suttas, many important suttas that start off with a summary of the internal and external sense bases and contact and feeling that arises from that, seems to me that that's a definite advice that if that's not our usual way of relating to the world, that we ought to make the effort in meditation to develop that habit or that skill of being able to notice things at that simple level, and that then it gives a chance for it's an opportunity for insight to arise, because we're able to see like our experience as it actually is. Yeah. Okay. Sheila.
Thank you, Ayya. This was very helpful, and in many ways, I think I'm experiencing this almost reverse engineering, so to speak. And that is, I have been in terms of not self and seeing not self in items and in things. And so at some point in life, these things, possessions, whatever, were acquired when there was craving and grasping, and seeing a self in these things, which drove the acquisition and, oh, I have to have this. And so now I'm noticing and experiencing, seeing a particular thing in my life, possession, and coming to the conclusion that this can be let go of. And because there is no self in that, so what is the attachment, and why it's just kind of like an anchor in many ways. And I identified with it as a self at some point in the past, but it in my life now plays no role. And because I can see there is no self in that, it's been very helpful to use that to let it go. And I'm not, moving around the house dumping everything, because there is the, oh, do I want to let it go? And recognizing the self that is stuck in some of these things. But it's really helping me to unburden myself, if I could say that, no pun intended, of things that I truly acquired when clearly my life and focus was about clinging and grasping and identifying with whatever the thing was. So thank you.
Yeah. When I was new in the Dhamma, sometimes I had to do the shopping for the Bhavana Society, and I noticed that the grocery store has a large variety of the same thing in many different brands, and I realized that this was all a trick to build up identification. So if I would say, like, among all the different brands of vanilla yogurt or plain yogurt, which brand do I choose? And then it has to be like based on something. And it would be like, I'm the kind of person that I take the cheapest brand, or I'm the kind of person that takes the best brand, or I'm the kind of person that takes the brand of the company from Massachusetts, because I was in Massachusetts before. But whatever brand I choose and make it my brand, it becomes like it's like a crab or something that's latching onto the body and becomes attached. So then it's not the phrase, the kama guna. The kama is sensuality. Guna is a string or a tie. In that sense, it means literally, it's like the leash that is tying a person to their sensual objects. And it's such a useful concept, because you can be in the same store with the same array of different flavors of yogurt or different brands of yogurt, and either the leash is present or it's not present. So if the leash has been cut, then there's just not any identification associated with picking up a box of yogurt. And the same thing with anything from the, the different personal things that we used to put around us that were expressing our personality, to the most subtle, what they call acquisitions. That's more like a psychological things that become acquisitions of the self. It's the presence or the absence of the string, not the presence or absence of those different objects. Your idea of reverse engineering, I think, is quite helpful, and I think that others may also find that helpful. Richard?
Thank you. I'm sorry. I just want to apologize. Because of a medical condition, I have to sometimes jump up and leave the room. So I missed the idea of the reverse engineering. But as soon as you said that, it made me think of how Buddha discovered what's commonly called the 12-fold chain of dependent origination. That's what he did. He said, okay, here I am. I'm facing old age, disease, and death, right? How did I get here? Oh, because I was born, right? So if I wasn't born, right, I wouldn't be facing this. Well, how did I get to be born? And then he reverse engineers the process backwards, right? Until he comes to avidya, right? Which commonly translates as ignorance, but I prefer incomplete knowledge, okay? So I'm not sure what the example was given of reverse engineering, but I'm just saying that that's immediately what came to mind when I heard you say that. Anyways, and that may be helpful to people, because that's the key actually to Buddha's enlightenment. When he realized the 12-fold chain, he then shortly after that formulated the Four Noble Truths. And in the Four Noble Truths, he talks about it has each truth has three aspects. First you have to, the first one, it has to be completely understood and all that stuff. I don't remember all the details of that. You may know it better
So
than me.
dukkha should be fully understood.
Right.
The cause of dukkha should be abandoned.
Right.
The cessation of dukkha should be realized.
Right.
And the path to the cessation of dukkha should be developed.
Right.
And then for each one, he said, it exists, what should be done about it, and then saying, I have done this about it. Yeah.
Right. And there's three aspects, right? So he realizes that he's perfected the samadhi, the eightfold chain, all the way up to what's commonly translated as neither perception or non-perception. But he sees that cessation, because when people try to do neither perception or non-perception, the psychological idea is, I should cease perception. But because they don't do it completely, they cease perception of the external, but they still have their internal mind, perception. That's why it's neither perception or non-perception. They still have the internal perception of mind. So he develops that with cessation, because it's called cessation, right? Of usually translates cessation of perception and feeling, but the Pali really should go, and again, I don't like the word feeling, cessation of sense perception. So he ceases all of his sense perception and enters into that fifth stage, which he said he discovered on the night of his enlightenment. And he says that anyone who can attain that stage will either become an arahant if they let go of sensual desire for becoming, or avidya, incomplete knowledge, or if not, they'll become a no returner, and from there they'll attain arahatship. So that was actually the key, to him, doing that reverse engineering, and then And then from there, coming to the understanding, developing the concept of the Four Noble Truths, and then perfecting it in himself by perfecting cessation, which at that point, the cessation at that point is just what's left. The body you left behind, you're already in formlessness, right? But there is still sense perception even in the formless realm. So you've left behind sense perception of these are the five khandhas, right? So what's left in that group? There is just sankhara and vijnana, which I prefer cognition, okay? So he sees at that point very, very subtle sankharas arising and disappearing in his mind, and he lets go of sankhara completely. So with sankhara not being there, there can be no cognition of sankhara. So those two disappear. And in that state, he realized that his own mind he has complete mastery of, and that the only thing that was binding him was incomplete knowledge, and then falsely identifying through mana, right, with things as himself that are not himself. So so anyway, I just like that idea of reverse engineering. It just tripped this whole thing off in my mind. So maybe that'll be helpful to people, because I know a lot of people wonder, well, what really is, liberation? What really is enlightenment? And it's quite clearly explained in the suttas, but for some reason, many people don't notice these nuances. I'm not sure why. I think because we all come to it with preconceived notions. It took me many, 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 many years of tens of thousands of hours of study and meditation to see these things in my own practice. But people may disagree and think, I don't know what I'm talking about, I'm deluded, and that's fine. I don't mind. But I think it might be helpful, if people can see it in this way. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, so what you're speaking about is going beyond the theme that I had set out for tonight's talk, but certainly very worthwhile to try to make those what's called the immaterial meditations accessible and significant. I think a lot of the way that Buddhism is taught, it's just something that's sort of a mystery that people don't really work with because they don't understand how to work with it. So I've heard you mention this several times in the past, and I may look into how that teaching could be made more relevant and meaningful for more people. I do want to give Seminary Satyama a chance to say something if she's willing to do so.
Thank you, Ayya. Not much to add. I just I think I'm just finding it more and more interesting how these things actually work in direct experience. I've often maybe talked to you about how fascinating it is to see the khandhas, actually working in real time. When you see something or smell something or taste something, or particularly when the mind is, agitated in some way, I just find that more and more I'm able to land a few punches, like get on top of the process of really feeling and sensing how the Vedana, the feeling, the sensation is like working with the strings, like a marionette, like a puppet. You can see the strings working and how the contact happens, and the feeling is like getting pumped up. Something is welling up or pumping the feeling, and that makes it feel really real. Whatever you're experiencing, it gives it that sense of reality. And if you're not aware that that's happening, that the sensation is like building this story of this is me, I'm here, and I'm having these feelings, and I'm liking this or disliking that, then it's easy to get going with whatever the enticement is. But the more I'm able to catch that that operation, see the see it not from some theoretical place, but from really just being in the body, being in the moment, and being like on the ball with what's happening in my direct experience. When I contact something, the jig more and more is up. So I'm just really appreciating how the Dhamma works with us if we're, really engaged and really interested.
I'd like to remind everybody that this coming weekend is quite rich. Um, on the Dhamma Darini website, you can get information about the day-long retreat that we're having on Saturday between 9 o'clock and 4 o'clock California time, which will be streamed on at least streamed on YouTube. You can sign up for that. Or if you're living around anywhere near Fremont, you could come in person and attend that at the Wat Buddhanasorn. Then we'll have our regular programs on Sunday. And then Sunday evening, Ayya Tataloka is organizing a panel discussion in honor of Ayya Khema. And this is going to be sort of like a panel discussion with some of the old students of Ayya Khema who have will be able to speak about how her unique way of practicing and teaching has affected what they were able to realize and what they've been able to practice with. This is the 100th anniversary of the birth of Ayya Khema that will be presented this coming Sunday evening on Zoom. So this may be a good time to pay respects to the Triple Gem. Araham Samma Sambuddha Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supartipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Thank you all for your patient listening, good questions, and your sincere practice of the Dhamma.
Thank you, Ayya, for your teaching. We bow to our teacher.
Sabbe Buddha Balabhata Pachakana Jayam Balam Avahantanam Chite Jena Vakambandani Sava Sava.
Good night, Ayya. Thank you again.
Okay.
Good night. See you Saturday.